everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, I want to go over this article that I found while going through Flipboard, which is an app that compiles a bunch of different news stories for you, and you flip through and then you read the ones that you're interested in. This one is from sci-fi.com and it's called Aliens Will Reveal Themselves in 2027, claims former CIA agent. So that piqued my interest a little bit. There are times when people claim things and, you never know what to believe. But I thought that I would look into it and find the original sources that go beyond just this article. And, we've been talking about aliens a little bit more frequently on the channel recently, and I think a lot of people are, just because it's in the news. There was this recent hearing uh, with Congress. I can't remember what committee it was. I don't care a whole lot, but you have these whistleblowers that are coming forth, so-called whistleblowers, who knows what's actually happening. And they reported to Congress during this hearing, and there's been a lot of other things happening before that point. And we're actually going to kind of go back and do a little review of kind of like some of the main things that have happened when it comes to aliens and UFOs. But what we've discussed in previous videos are multiple possibilities of what's going on. Is this all just some kind of hoax that's being perpetrated by secret combinations that are in positions of power? Are they using this as some tool to manipulate society? It's not really happening, but they're putting this out to meet their own ends. Yeah, it's a possibility. We've discussed the possibility that no, there really are people from other worlds that are coming here. The unique thing about our religion is that we do believe that there are other worlds that have other of Heavenly Father's children on them. It's not clear whether during mortality we're able to interact with them. If I remember right, I think Joseph Fielding Smith didn't believe that we would be able to, because if you went to that other world and you saw that they have the church there and practice it the same way that we do, that it would rob people of their faith, which I think is a pretty sound conclusion. So, could it be them? We went into the Pearl of Great Price. We looked at Facsimile 2, I think it was, where it talks about these different presiding planets, and we kind of explored that possibility. We don't really know in what way they preside over this Earth, whether it's just priesthood, or do they actually interact with our world in maybe a way that we do or don't know. Who knows? I don't know. Will we have more contact, or will we begin to have contact with other worlds in the millennium, because we will now be at a different stage? Maybe contact with other worlds is reserved for the millennial stage. I don't know. But I think the theory that I kind of stick to now, I used to think, yeah, I think there's people from other worlds coming here. Back when I was young, a kid, a teenager, my 20s. But things kind of started to change for me as a lot of people started talking about the possibility that it's actually just Satan in some kind of way. It would seem that he has physical power in this world. He has human agents. He appears as an angel of light. He shows up from time to time in the scriptures, and we're informed by the scriptures that he appears to people. And so why not appear to people that have power and then teach them the secret combinations so that they can acquire wealth and power for themselves, as long as you do what, he wants you to do. So it's really not too hard to believe that maybe he's introduced knowledge to them, knowledge such as technology, potentially. As far as I know, he doesn't have any sort of veil over his mind. So I don't know how intelligent he was and is, but maybe he's allowed to do that. So who knows what these craft are, Are they drones? I don't know. Are they some kind of spacecraft? I don't know. Are they interdimensional craft? I don't know. But whatever the case, I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing is being orchestrated by the adversary, that since he knows that we're approaching the millennium and he knows that he's not going to have the same power there that he does here, he's going to be bound, that he'll want to cause cause as many problems as possible for those that do go into the millennium by causing them to doubt the Savior when he comes. Because just think about it. If you are really upset that the Savior was chosen as the Savior, and you're just intent on ruining everything for this entire mortal experience for everybody as much as possible, well, when things come to an end and you're about to be bound, you probably want to cause as much chaos as you can, uh, into a place that you can't go. So why not right now, while you have time, try and really hype up aliens? And so when Christ comes, it's not like everybody is going to be converted in a moment. There will be many that will believe him, that'll join the church, but there will still be many that remain Catholics, Presbyterians. We've read all those quotes from different prophets saying that there's still going to be other religions, including agnostics, every belief system that there is right now. So for people that aren't going to join the church right away, you might be able to work with that group a little bit by doing this right now and being like, hey, look, all this alien stuff that was happening for the last few years. I mean, look, they revealed themselves. It's an alien. He's claiming to be Jesus, but he's just doing that so that you accept this truth easier, for example. So that's my best guess. If I were to make an official guess, that's what I would say right now is going on and why this is all of a sudden coming to life. So with that in mind, you supposedly have a former CIA agent that says that they're going to reveal themselves in 2027. So is it possible that Satan, through his scheming, also, just like us, you and me, kind of know when it's going to happen or knows that time is almost up? What if he is set, 2027 as like a goal, like to get all of his work done before 2027 because by his calculations, Christ will come by that time? Not that he would know, but just like us, I'm sure that he can put pieces together. He can observe what's going on with the church. He can observe what's going on in the world and come to his own conclusions of when Christ is going to come. So is that so far-fetched to say? I don't think so. Let's look at a couple things. This is going to be a little bit of review, starting with Joseph Smith himself. Okay, so if you're wondering, well, no one can possibly know when the second coming is going to happen. Well, this is what Joseph Smith said, and you can go dig up your August 2002 Ensign. It was actually published in there. This is a quote from Joseph Smith. Did Christ speak this as a general principle throughout all generations? Oh no, he spoke in the present tense. No man that was then living upon the footstool of God knew the day or the hour. But he did not say that there was no man throughout all generations that should not know the day or the hour. No, for this would be in flat contradiction with other scripture. For the prophet says that God will do nothing but what he will reveal unto his servants, the prophets. Consequently, if it is not made known to the prophets, it will not come to pass. I'm sure that Satan is aware of this reality, that the prophet of God on the earth today probably has the best sense and may just flat out know when the second coming is going to happen. And Satan, with his knowledge that he's acquired these last 6,000 years and potentially everything that he knew from before, he may have a better idea than we do of like the certain things that are supposed to play out in the lead up to the second coming. Okay, now let's look at Millennial Messiah really quick by Bruce R. McConkie. He says, in the light of these principles, we are able to understand this statement of the prophet Joseph Smith. Quote, it is not the design of the Almighty to come upon the earth and crush it and grind it to powder, but he will reveal it to his servants, the prophets. So here, I need to put that quote on there. That's like another one. The prophet then identifies some events and signs destined to precede the second coming, all of which we hereafter consider. For our present purposes, it suffices to know that the children of light shall know, not the day or the hour, but the approximate time of our Lord's return. Now you might be like, well, he just said the children of light. Yes. Out of everyone here in mortality that has a physical body, the people that are spiritual, the people that are members of the church and watching for the signs, it's not going to be a surprise. The scriptures say as much. The wicked, or those that are not religious, not familiar with our religion, not as much, if at all. But Satan being a different category, him having a perfect knowledge, exactly what's going on, I would say that he, just as well as us, could probably know by just putting the pieces together. Bruce R. McConkie continues, this approximate time can certainly be narrowed down to a generation. After teaching that desolations would befall the Jews of his day as a thief in the night, Jesus said, and it shall come to pass that this generation of Jews shall not pass away until every desolation which I have told you concerning them shall come to pass. In speaking of the signs of the times in the last days, he said, verily, I say unto you, this generation in which these things shall be shown forth shall not pass away until all I have told you shall be fulfilled. It is on this basis that those who wait for the second coming of the consolation of Israel seek to learn the signs of the times. I think toward the end here, there's another part of this where he quotes something that Joseph Smith said. All right, it says, with reference to that day of which we write, Joseph Smith said, quote, I was once praying very earnestly to know the time of the coming of the Son of Man, when I heard a voice repeat the following, Joseph, my son, if thou livest until thou art 85 years old, thou shalt see the face of the Son of Man. Therefore let this suffice, and trouble me no more on this matter. I was left thus, without being able to decide whether his coming referred to the beginning of the millennium or to some previous appearing, or whether I should die and thus see his face. I believe the coming of the Son of Man will not be any sooner than that time. Let me just stop right here. This is important because from time to time, there's people that come along and they're like, oh, they always thought that the second coming is going to happen in their lifetime. They always thought that all the way back to Christ. And that's not true. There's probably been people, yes, but like as a church officially saying things like Joseph Smith right here, no. As far as comments or things put in talks in general conference or whatever, no. That's not true. Here's an example of that. Joseph Smith believed, because of this revelation, that it would not happen until he was 85 at least. Okay, a few days after making this statement, the prophet referred to it in a sermon and said, quote, I prophesy in the name of the Lord, and let it be written, the Son of Man will not come in the clouds of heaven till I am 85 years old. End quote. It was in this same sermon that he said, quote, were I going to prophesy, I would say the end of the world will not come in 1844, 5 or 6, or in 40 years. There are those of the rising generation who shall not taste death till Christ comes. End quote. The rising generation includes all those yet to be born to parents then living. Manifestly, many of these are now among us and will be living after the year 2080, the year 2000. has come and gone. So I went through, I put together the spreadsheet called Quotes Rising Generation. This is another way that I know that they haven't always said that you young people will be the ones of the second coming. It's always said by people that don't even research. They don't even know. I've actually put in the labor and the effort. I've searched high and low. I've received many of these from you, and you cannot find anything before 1967, with two exceptions. Joseph Smith, that we just talked about, and then in Doctrines of Salvation, Joseph Fielding Smith put his opinion here. Okay, that is it. So, Joseph Smith, I did this according to what Bruce R. McConkie said in Millennial Messiah. So, you have someone born at the time that Joseph Smith said that. You go forward in time. During this time, polygamy is being practiced. So say that he has a child at the regular age of, like, say, well, not regular age, but a child at the age of 40, for example. So you have this child right here. Go forward in time. And then this child has a child at 40, for example, because these next two generations, he explains it later on. I'm not going to find it right now because it's not really the point of this video, but he says that that next generation would also be included in the rising generation. Now, two things to think about. So you have this grandchild, also part of the rising generation, born in 1923, or you have the original parent, which there are cases where men that practice polygamy were having children all the way up until they died. And I've been told that Joseph F. Smith is one of them, that he passed away at the age of like 80 or something like that, with a wife that was pregnant with one of his children. So that child was born after he died. Either way, it brings you to these couple years right here, 2023, or you could also go one more year in 2024. And once you know, 2024 is when President Nelson was born. So President Nelson is part of that original generation that Joseph Smith spoke about. And if we go forward in time, he is going to turn 100 next year. He's going to turn 99 this year and 100 next year. Another thing to keep in mind is Israel and the whole idea of the fig tree generation, but more specifically, they have this concept of the eighth decade, the curse of the eighth decade, that Israel as a united country, all the tribes, or in this case, just Israel in the latter days, have never existed for more than 80 years. So if we look at Israel in columns F and G, you go forward in time, their 80th year is going to be in 2028. And that just so happens to be the year after 2027. 2027. That's what this guy is talking about right here. The supposed, I say supposed because I haven't been able to verify it, supposed former CIA agent. Okay, so if I'm able to put together a spreadsheet like this, I don't know what methods Satan uses. I don't know if there are spiritual spreadsheets or whatever, but I'm sure that he can also put two and two together and come up with an approximate time. One last thing I want to touch on before we jump into this story. Remember what Elder Bednar said during the first presidency Christmas devotional of 2015. This is the one where he had you do like a thought experiment. He says, please now imagine 5 years have passed and you are now approximately 15 years old. You can recall clearly the prophecies of Samuel as you consider the present circumstances in which you live. And then later, in a climate of religious persecution, and at the tender age of approximately 15, you marveled one evening as the sun went down, but there was no darkness. So he said this 5 years before the year 2020. We've talked about the possibility that at least one or more sessions of Adamantiaman may have already happened, that the April 2020 General Conference itself may be part of the sessions, plural, of Adamantiaman. So it's interesting that he would say this 5 years before, just given the fact how significant the April 2020 General Conference was with everything that happened there. So that's just a long way of saying that if this former CIA agent is in fact a former CIA agent, and if he's privy to secret combinations, even if he wasn't directly involved, if he's aware of secret things in the military, the government, the intelligence community, he may have come across this and it could be inspired of Satan. Like, this may be an actual thing where it's like, okay, it's going to happen by 2027. So we need to do this and this and this and this before 2027. You get it? Okay, so let's read what I highlighted here. There are two interviews that you can watch. I found them. There's this one, a very small YouTube channel, only 395 subscribers, called Into the Weird with Hollywood. Whatever. Okay, so it's this girl right here, Hollywood. And then this is the guy. This is the former CIA officer, John Ramirez. And then there's also another one, and the link that I found takes you to TikTok. By the way, I'm on TikTok, so if you're on TikTok, consider following me. But you can watch this here as well. This is on Dreaming Ravens. Okay. I tried to verify, is this someone that has come up in the news? Is he real? I have no idea. Coast to Coast AM has interviewed him, I think, it looks like. So again, now, if you're not familiar with Coast to Coast AM, it's a radio show that has to do with this type of stuff, with like the supernatural and UFOs and ghosts and Bigfoot and all that stuff. So I'm not sure that gives it any credibility, but they claim, that this is his biography. They say John Ramirez served from 1984 to 2009 in the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology, Directorate of Intelligence, and the ODNI National Counter-Proliferation Center, NCPC. During his 25-year career, he specialized in ballistic missile defense systems and signals analysis of weapons systems system radars. He served as the chief of base for an overseas technical collection facility and was chief of the Electronic Intelligence, or ELINT for short, analysis branch. A founding member of the ODNI NCPC, he was the SIGINT, however you want to pronounce it, specialist and the multidiscipline collection requirements strategist for counter-proliferation equities. Prior to his career in the intelligence community, John enlisted in the U.S. Navy as an electronics warfare technician. He is a graduate from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He is currently a member of the Association of Former Intelligence Officers and the Central Intelligence Retirees Association. I will say this: when I listen to him talk, he does not sound like a crazy person. He's very professional. His demeanor is in line with what he claims that he is. And I listened to a lot of the verbiage that he used, and it does seem like he has like a military background. So I feel like that gives him a little bit of credibility. Still can't really verify him unless you consider Coast to Coast AM this as verification. So anyway, okay, so back to sci-fi.com. If you're paying casual attention to the headlines, it might feel as though there's been a shift in the extraterrestrial tides. These days, the existence of visiting extraterrestrials don't sound so unrealistic. According to former CIA agent John Ramirez, there's a reason for that. So I don't know if sci-fi.com has been able to verify him, but after leaving the intelligence community, Ramirez has enjoyed a second career as a UFO aficionado. Well, that might make it a little bit suspect, because you got to keep making money when a job ends, and I don't know, maybe he has retirement. I have no idea, but I always wonder about that, whether it's like a politician, an actor, someone in the military. The show must go on for your personal life. So could it be that he is just like finding a way to, cash in on gullible people? It could be. I don't know. I'm not accusing him of that, but that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, making the rounds of the podcast circuit to tell the world that what he allegedly knows. In February 2023, he gave an interview on podcast UFO. Oh, that's the one that's on TikTok. During which he warned of an oncoming alien revelation in 2027. According to Ramirez, the recent disclosures, whistleblowers, and underwater discoveries are all part of an international or intentional narrative to prepare the population for the day the aliens show up. A day, he says, is only a few years away. I'm sure you've been following this story. Let me just pull it up in case you don't know. Underwater UFO fragments. I'm sure that'll pull it up. Yeah, see. USA Today, Harvard professor Avi Loeb says fragments in ocean that could be of otherworldly origin. But it goes not just otherworldly. He talks about the fact that it could be artificial. I'm sure it says it here in this article, but here's some images of what they found. Okay. All right. Okay, quote from Ramirez. We're kind of preparing the U.S. population, at least, and by extension, the world population, to that reality. That there is a presence here and that we need to explain this presence, because if they show up and we continue to do what we did before in previous decades, there will be mass panic, Ramirez said. The reference to previous decades presumably refers to a policy of denial or cover-ups surrounding events like Roswell, a policy which has apparently been reversed. Ramirez continues explaining that the authorities had no real choice in the matter because aliens have a standing appointment to knock at our door or knock down our door a few years from now. Again, imagine this from a seeker combination point of view. Imagine that Satan is telling his human agents, like, okay, look, this is the deadline. Not that he knows when the second coming is happening, but maybe by his calculations, I want to get everything done by 2027. That's like, by my estimation, me, the adversary, this is what I think. This is the amount of time I think I might have. You understand? Okay, Ramirez continues. He says, in many ways, I think the word got out within the government that they're showing up in 2027, and we better be prepared. I've heard 2027 in kind of an official capacity I can't reveal. I would say people in the government are aware of something happening and that there is limited time, a few more years, to prepare the people, Ramirez said. Isn't it crazy if that's reality? As we are trying to gather Israel, as we're trying to spread the gospel, and we don't have much time, Satan on the other side also has to do his work and try and screw things up as much as possible. It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. I've also considered the possibility, what if, you have other groups, like, say, the city of Enoch. The way that the scriptures read and everything that I've been able to study and find, it seems like they're going to come with the Savior. But what if they show up before? What if they have some kind of mission to play to help the transition of power for those that are going to remain? Probably a lot of people in government will be considered telestial and will not move on. But what if there are some kind of visitations taking place right now. That was another thing that we considered. There was that Sherry Dew talk called, it's called something like Celestial Training in a Telestial World, where she talked about the fact that President Nelson told her that just all these different government leaders were wanting to meet with him in Salt Lake City and unsolicited. They just want to meet with him. Could it be that they're being contacted that, what if angels are appearing to them because they're going to be key in the continuity of government in transition into the millennium. And therefore it's like, hey, prime minister, well, probably not prime minister, but ambassador so and so or whatever, I want you to go meet with President Nelson because this is going to be happening soon. You need to go meet with him because he's going to be key and a leader under Christ as we move into this transition. I don't know. Something like that could be happening. Okay, moving on. We're not sure what kind of quote unquote kind of an official capacity is, but we'll just have to take his word for it. This isn't the first time Ramirez has made headlines for a claim he made in an interview. In a conversation on the YouTube channel Into the Weird with Hollywood, Ramirez claimed he had an altercation with a reptilian. They fought in the space between his living room and bedroom, and in the morning, he had scratches on his body. Now, before you turn this off, look what he says about reptilians. In case you're blissfully unaware, reptilians are an alleged race of humanoid reptiles who, according to some conspiracy circles, are really running the show on Earth. According to Ramirez, however, the reptilians aren't quite what you might think. Instead, they are people with reptilian ancestry, but they look, in Ramirez's own words, quite human to us. So there's a lot I could say about this. I don't believe that there's like a physically necessarily a physically reptilian species among us. But what I do believe is that there is, for example, Israel. We know that if you're descended through Israel physically, you're more likely to recognize the gospel when you hear it. That's been said many times. I'm not going to find the quotes right now. Well, maybe the opposite is true as well. Maybe if you're descended through other lines, maybe not so much. Maybe you're more antagonistic and it's based on who you were in the pre-existence. So a big difference between if you're living the gospel and if you're not is things like pride. The further down the pride spectrum you go, the colder you become, right? You know that usually when you're prideful, you're cold. You're cold to others because you're living the type of lifestyle where you're competing with everybody. And I know people hate it when I bring up narcissism, but when you study narcissism, these are people that they're not able to regulate their feelings of self-worth. Okay. In order for them to regulate how they feel about themselves, they have to get you to tell them that they're good, they're beautiful, they're smart. They can't do it themselves. So they're hopelessly dependent on people regulating their emotions, just the same way that a reptile has to depend on the sun or some heat source to regulate its body temperature. Whereas mammals, they don't have to. In my understanding, it's because of our metabolism, and we're able to produce our own heat. And we can not only can we produce it, but we can share it with others. But reptiles cannot, right? So if you're a human, not a literal reptile, but if you're living that kind of lifestyle where you're competing with everybody, you need everybody to tell you how great you are at whatever costume you're wearing, whether it's the religious narcissist, whether it's the rich, the beautiful, the smart, the funny, the whatever your knack, you know, you're depending on other people and you're not really giving anything out. right? You're not really going to people and telling them, "Hey, you're great. I think that you're good," and whatever. They may do that for manipulation purposes, but not because they're being genuine. Anyway, I'm gonna get nailed for that. I know. This is a in the realm of psychology, and I'm a psychologist, and I appreciate that. But when science comes up against spiritual concepts, they may not explain the full thing. Like what are psychologists supposed to do? Like when they come across these rigid individuals that fit to a T everything that is wickedness, are they going to diagnose them as wicked? Is that a diagnosis in psychology? I don't think so. And I understand that diagnosing somebody, that's a psychological, a medical term. It's when you determine what the problem is and how you're going to fix it. Okay? So, I'm not going to pretend to be a psychologist, but I think that all these things like narcissism, and the other things like that. Uh, and by the way, psychology has not had very good success, is my understanding, when it comes to narcissists. They can like teach them certain behaviors, like, hey, this is what normal people do. Maybe you should word things like this. But they don't get to the very core of the problem because they can't. And I think it's because it's not so much a psychological issue as it is a spiritual one. I wouldn't say that about um, any other psychological condition or mental illness, but this is a personality disorder. It's not like it's a mood disorder because chemicals are not balanced. It's not psychosis. It's not these different types of things. It's a personality that's gone way to the extreme. So, anyway, sorry, that's my argument. I'm just saying that because a couple people brought this up. That's where I'm coming from. So I'm going to keep referring to narcissism because I think it's helpful to understand. And so it's no secret that in the higher echelons of society, the rich, the powerful, people in politics, uh, there's a pretty good representation of the psychopathic community among those groups. And you have to study psychopathy. I feel like it's the same thing. We're very similar to narcissism. A lot of times they're comorbid, which means that they happen together. But you have people that rise to the top of the pyramid, so to speak, that have certain personalities, and they're cold, and they seek power, and they crave attention. So you might say they're reptilian in a spiritual sense. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So, okay, so let's move on to this next one because there's a little bit more. This is on hitc.com. I have no idea who these people are, but the article is called "The Fear of Alien Invasion in 2027 as John Ramirez claims they're showing up." There's one part here I wanted to share. There aren't a whole lot of news articles that cover this. These are basically the only two. This one says John went on to claim that a clock of 10 years was set up in 2017 as the speculated 2027 event was already known to some. So that's an interesting bit of the puzzle here, if this is real. A 10-year time frame, because we just talked about Elder Bednar potentially knowing that in 5 years there was going to be a special conference, and maybe that conference was one of the milestones of the second coming, one of the key events. But anyway, 10 years, right? So 2017, do you remember what happened that year? There was all sorts of stuff. It was the last year of President Monson's presidency, and then he passed away January 2nd of 2018. So that's just an interesting thing if this is true. And then you have all the other things that took place in 2017, like the Great American Eclipse. You also had a Muamua that showed up. That was the year of the Revelation 12 sign, right? Surely Satan would know when he. Okay, let's look it up. Path of totality. 2017 Great American Eclipse. Great American Eclipse. Misspelled it. Let's go with this one. Okay, space.com. Let's see, let's blow this up. I wish I had one of the actual maps up, but it's going to take a while for me to find one of those. Surely Satan would be familiar with the significance of an eclipse that's already pretty rare. It's more on the rare side for an eclipse to go from coast to coast. That's what makes it on the more rare side. But as he sees that it goes over Independence, Missouri in the south, and Adirondack in the north, and then far west as well, maybe him having a perfect knowledge from the pre-existence of the significance of these sites. Well, for that matter, actually being there when Adam and Eve were there, because that's where the Garden of Eden was, and I guess is, you could say, just not in its current form or in its former form. That might catch his attention. So maybe when that happens, he's like, okay, guys, we got 10 years. Because maybe in his mind, it's like, okay, surely within 10 years, it's going to happen. Or something like that. Right? This is something that he could easily look at and be like, okay, yep. This is this is a sign that it's coming. Okay, so going back. Suggesting that Luis Elizondo, they misspelled his name here, suggesting that Luis Elizondo is also aware of the supposed occurrence a few years from now. John claims the U.S. Army counterintelligence special agent said, quote, "Just find a hobby for 5 years and it'll all be out." So I don't know. It's weird. As I was going through here, and I was kind of just like skimming through the transcript because I wasn't about to watch this entire thing in preparation for this video. I might watch the full thing later, but this is the part of the video where he says that at about the 40-minute and 15-second mark. He says, and I believe that the part of this controlled dissemination is to release more information to the public starting in 2017. A 10-year program, I think, because in 2022, Luis Elizondo said, find a hobby for 5 years and they'll all come out. So 22 plus 5 to 37. So maybe, I think that's supposed to be 27. So maybe 2027. But I think that the initial part of that disclosure is the least acknowledged. What Dr. Garry Nolan stated in this conference, my gosh, I mean, just 18 minutes, and it's pretty much what the government could potentially say real soon now. So what is he talking about? Well, I searched for that too. I'm going to go ahead and I'll put these on my recommended videos playlist as well as the description below if you want to watch these. This one's short. Like he said, it's only 18 minutes. But this is the SALT iConnections conference. I have no idea what that is. Looks like it took place in New York. They have their own YouTube channel, 49.9 thousand subscribers, and they interviewed Dr. Garry Nolan, and it says here of Stanford University School of Medicine, and he was talking all about it, about what he knew and what he believed was going on as far as these visitations of these craft. And I don't know. He again, he is not a kook, and he was talking very seriously, and I think that you can see that in his body language. The whole time he talks very serious, and well, he has the credentials. He's a serious person, so you can watch that. Now, are there other indications of this happening or that people know? Yeah, there are. In fact, I forgot to pull this up. Catholic aliens baptize. This caught my attention a long time ago when this came out. This came out in 2014. And as you can see, it was in a few different articles, but this one's in the Atlantic. Pope Francis said he would definitely baptize aliens if they asked him to. And I think this was kind of like the first time that the Vatican said anything about um, extraterrestrial life and what the church would do upon the discovery of extraterrestrial life. Well, here's one from 2010, so that's 4 years before. Pope's astronomer says he would baptize an alien if it asked him. So at least from 2010, but it seemed like there were more stories from 2014. So you have this thing happen at the Vatican where they're like, oh yeah, aliens, that's fine, it's cool. We'd actually baptize them if they if they wanted to follow Christ. Um, and then later, well, this is interesting. This is also in 2014. I already did a video about this, so I'm not going to go over all this, but you can go back maybe a couple weeks, maybe like a month. I'm not sure. Forbes, Iran says tall white space aliens control America. In fact, I'm gonna find that video for you because I want to show you the thumbnail. I was pretty pleased with this thumbnail because I used um, Microsoft Bing's AI art generator, and I use that with a bunch of my thumbnails. I like it. I think it's cool. I think some people they kind of get tired of it because it just feels like it's fake. I don't know. But I like it because you can come up with some pretty amazing images like this right here, this one right here. But let me go back. Okay, you see this one? Oops, lost it again. That's what happens when you zoom in. You see this one? So the way that Iran described these aliens is that they were tall, white, and they looked like they were Nordic or like Scandinavian. And I was like, you know what? I wonder if they look, according to Iran, if they look something like this. People showing up, appearing as angels of light to the powers of the world. But it's really weird that, that same year that the Vatican talks about that, like, oh yeah, aliens, that's cool. That same year, Iran comes out with this story through its Fars news agency, right? So that's kind of weird, you know. And then you have in 2017, this was December 16th, 2017. This was the big story that came out. The big story about the U.S. Navy videos and the revelation of the ATIP program. ATIP stands for Advanced. I think it's yeah. Here it is. Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. So basically, it was kind of like a secret program run by the Pentagon to study UFOs, right? So this revelation came out, and I think the very first time it comes out is with the New York Times, as well as the videos that I'm sure everybody has seen by now. Um, this was a big thing. This was like a really big deal. Let's go to our timeline, second coming timeline. I feel like sometimes it's helpful to actually see things on a timeline. At least for me, I'm a very visual person. So Okay, so here we are, uh, the 15th of December, and a couple weeks after that, that's when President Monson passes away. So a couple weeks before he passes away, you have this pretty big milestone as far as UFOs go that takes place. Um, I don't know how that works, but I think that the timing is really weird. It's interesting that it happened in 2017. Um, oh yeah, look at this. That same month, earlier that month, the United States recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And then a couple months before that, Oumuamua, the first observed interstellar object to enter the solar system. Revelation 12 sign, the same day as the women's session of General Conference, the 23rd of September, 2017. The Great American Eclipse, the 21st of August, 2017. Also, 2017 is when Trump and Pence took office, so that was also significant. It was also the year 5777 on the Hebrew calendar, so that's three sevens, and so they viewed it as important. So a lot of interesting things happening that year, but the latest entry that I have for the year 2017 is this: the ATIP program revelation, and also the uh, putting out the U.S. Navy UFO videos. And then just a couple weeks after President Monson passes away, and of course in that same month, technically on the 14th of January, that's when President Nelson becomes president of the church. It's so weird. It's so weird, but that's not all. So you have that happen, and then um, December 10th, so 3 years later, almost to the day, almost exactly 3 years later, that's when you have former Israeli space security chief says aliens exist, humanity not ready. So again, if there's like in the dark corners of geopolitics, people that are in the know, if they kind of know what the plan is, and maybe they don't know exactly who they're talking to, maybe they don't recognize Satan for who he is, and they think that they are speaking to aliens. Again, let's look at this picture again. If this is who's showing up and they're saying that they're aliens and that humanity's not ready yet, there's still all this stuff we need to do. We need to get everybody very, very used to the idea of aliens. And then little do the rest of us know that it's because they want to cause problems in the millennium for people to not recognize Christ when he comes. But yeah, so he says that, and again, this is not a kook. This is him right here, Haim Ashed, and he has quite the resume. He has quite the resume. Ashed served in the highly secretive Unit 81, which provided technological solutions to the IDF's Military Intelligence Directorate. He was the former chair of the Space Committee of the National Council for Research and Development and for the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Space. So he was really high up there in the Israeli intelligence and military establishment, right? This is not just some weirdo. And, here it is. It's reported. This was reported all over the place. Here it is in NBC News. There's an interesting thing here. It says, okay, it's quoting him. He says, there is an agreement between the U.S. government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. End quote. Ashed added that President Donald Trump was aware of the extraterrestrials' existence and had been on the verge of revealing information, but was asked not to in order to prevent mass hysteria. They've been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are, Ashed said, referring to the Galactic Federation, which is really weird to say. Now, the original interview is actually on this um, website, uh, this news agency, Yediot, I guess is the name. And you can translate it probably using any browser. I use Google Chrome. But you can translate it from Hebrew to English. And it's actually it's a pretty extensive interview. Uh, it's a lot of like question and answer, and he has a lot to say. One thing I wasn't too crazy for, and kind of maybe gives it away a little bit. Can we go back to English, please? Thank you. Is this part right here? And this might be something that you would expect of quote unquote aliens that are actually Satan. Okay, so the question is, and what will happen when they reach us? Answer. Humanity will connect to the fabric of the universe, and once we connect, our science will jump thousands of years. We will be capable of anti-gravity. We will be able to move between star systems. Religion will lose the control it has today. Extraterrestrials do not believe in religion. Extraterrestrials, quote unquote. They believe in deciphering the fabric of the universe, which is not God, is mathematics. So, to my mind, that's highly suspect. You know, these people running around as aliens. Well, what I think is Satan masquerading as aliens, right? Here, let's go back to this picture. Masquerading as aliens and being like, no, we don't believe in religion. It's, yes, your consciousness continues. Because that's another part here. There's a part where he talks about consciousness. Okay. Answer. But we are also energy. So it's very new agey. But we are also energy. Even when we die, we don't die because we are made of molecules and atoms, and we move to another energy. You connect back to the cosmic fabric, to the network, to the connection of consciousness. You are consciousness. And then the interview says, remember, this is like a rough translation. So it says, she will die with me, meaning consciousness. So like, it will die with me, won't it? No, forget it. Consciousness will not die. Everything you have accumulated is added. It goes to the same network. In everything you have accumulated in your life, the personality, the totality of what you have been through, it accumulates. Even Stephen Hawking realized that our consciousness adds to the fabric of the universe. We are building blocks, a step on the way. So this is this is an attractive thing to people that don't want to believe in God, don't want to believe in morals, don't want to believe in the commandments, in the gospel, right? It's like, oh, well, this is awesome because here is a way that you can believe in aliens. You can also believe that you're going to continue to live after this life, so you don't need God. So just do what you want to. Just be happy, seek pleasure, and do whatever. It's of no consequence. And here's these benevolent aliens that just want to help humanity advance and learn with them. You know, because they themselves are explorers, and so they invite it. Just like Star Trek, it's just like Star Trek because that's what happens in Star Trek. The Federation of the the United Federation of Planets is a big federation of different worlds, all these different alien species, and they explore the universe. And their main purpose is simply exploration. And it's a communist society. You know, there's no income or anything like that. When you work, it's because that's the work you want to do, not because you're trying to earn money. So it's like a socialist, communist, um, utopian world. And when they come across less advanced species, they wait until a certain point when they develop warp drive. I think that's the threshold. Once once a species reaches warp drive, am I right? Because I'm thinking about that one where Commander Riker. I'm not thinking about the Star Trek movie because in that the Vulcans contacted the humans once they had their first uh, warp drive flight by Dr. Cochrane. Oh, I'm a geek. Um, but there was one where Commander Riker, he was like in disguise among this like alien world that was at the same level of technology that we are right now, roughly, maybe a few decades into the future. But essentially, they were observing this planet and waiting for them to develop to a certain point, and then they would reveal themselves. It's like straight from Star Trek. This is like straight from Star Trek. And although I love Star Trek, I think it's essentially been used as kind of like a map. Not really a map, but again, you know that when you design a building or you come up with a plan, you don't just like think it up and then you go do it. You do models, you do mock-ups, right? Um, so that you can kind of like visualize it before you actually do it. Like, what's it going to look like? And I've felt like for a long time that Hollywood is a perfect tool if you're trying to see what your plan is going to look like. And and hit multiple birds with one stone. So not only like do this mock-up of what you're shooting for, but also to kind of condition people a little bit and be like and put into their minds, oh yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's really good. Let's do that. No more religion because Star Trek is a very atheistic show. You do have like different alien religions, but like I'm not aware of any of the humans that have religion. And in fact, in the Next Generation, Captain Picard is like strictly atheist. Um, but so it's like it's really insidious, even though it's a really good TV show. It's when you actually think about it, it's pretty insidious. And so I wouldn't be surprised if what he's saying here comes from that same playbook. You know, um, so you can read through the rest of this. It's just a bunch of it's a bunch of stuff. I believe that he believes that this is true. But what I think he doesn't know is that these aliens are actually just Satan and his followers masquerading as aliens. It makes the most sense to me. It makes the most sense. You know, tell me what your theory is. We've already gone through this exercise, but tell me what your theory is. Put it in the comments below. Um, you know, so this guy Ramirez, John Ramirez. Oh yeah, he doesn't have a picture here. I'm not so worried about his credentials because you don't have to have been that to still have the same effect. If you're some guy, maybe you weren't even in the military or in the CIA, if you're just like some guy that's willing to say things like this to these little podcasters to kind of like help condition the world, then mission accomplished. So I don't care too much about who he is. I think I do tend to believe that he is who he says he is, or something similar. Like I said, you just have to watch him, and especially if you have like a government or a military background, I feel like you can tell that he really has, at the very least, been in the military. Um, and just the way he talks and stuff like that. Same thing with this Dr. Garry Nolan. Same thing. So we're living in interesting times. Things are so weird right now. They're just so bizarre, and it gets like more and more bizarre as the days go by. Yesterday, or wait, was it yesterday? Or no, was it? Yeah, was it yesterday that we had the fire in Hawaii? the Lahaina fire. By the way, I apologize for this video right here. Lahaina, Hawaii destroyed, explosion near Moscow, because I was told by a billion of you, and thank you, I do appreciate it. Just remember, just if someone's already said it, you don't need to repeat it. But yes, I realized that there were some audio issues partway in, and I'm not sure why that was. My best guess, I noticed that there was an update on my computer, like a Windows update, and whenever Windows is like downloading the update, I've noticed before with other programs, it tends to interfere with my active open programs. So I'm assuming that that was probably taking place as I was recording the video. I don't think it's an issue with my microphone or anything else. That's the likely culprit. But anyway, all we can do is just keep watching and just see what actually happens. And yeah, but just let me know what you think below. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, make sure to share it. Consider joining my members only, where I'll cover things I don't on the main channel, or I'll kind of like talk about things before I do on the main channel. And I'll talk to you guys later.